What's up, Vampire Nation? This is your host of the Vampire Fantasy Football Forum. We are back. We are here recording. Last time you were here with us, we were doing a pre-championship game show. We had Jake and Grant on, and there's been a lot that's happened since then. And I will say I appreciate if you have been with us this entire season, if you have been with us throughout the entire NFL season and fantasy season. This has been a good year for us. It was our first year here recording, and so I want to tell you I appreciate you, the listeners, the people who commented on our videos, who asked questions, who joined us live. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you did for us this year. You definitely made us want to be better, and we will be. But right now, we are in our postseason. This is part one of our postseason fantasy football show, and last time I was on, I sounded very sick the last couple of times I've been on and recorded. That is part of the reason why it has taken so long to put something out now. But again, like I said, this is part one of two of our postseason shows. We'll have another one, and we will do more postseason content throughout the off season. As we all know, the NFL doesn't sleep. This is not a league that, while they don't play a whole year, all year round, there's news happening a lot. And so I am a firm believer for next year's fantasy football prep. It starts in the off season. We have to be aware of what's going on, how we think about the news, how that affects us, what we do as we prepare for next year. But I did want to kind of give a recap of, a little bit of what happened for championship weeks, if you were involved in the championship weeks, and kind of just overview of what we got right a little bit, what we got wrong, kind of from our preseason bowl predictions. And we're going to do a little bit more of that with part two, because part two coming up soon, we'll have Jake and Grant back, and we're going to give kind of answers to some of our favorite things and not so favorite things that happened to the season. But to dive in, championship week, hopefully many of you were involved with trying to win a fantasy football championship. I was one of those teams involved in trying to win a championship, because if you remember, I guess it wasn't a championship prep we did. It was a semifinal prep, and I did come out victorious on that semifinal game versus Jake, as we had discussed that before. And I was involved in the championship game in several of the leagues that I participated in this year. And it was a different type of game, right? Different type of week than we had, a little unprecedented. And you all know what I'm talking about at this point in time. We've all seen the story. We've all heard it. We're way past our information gathering, right? Damar Hamlin suffers a heart attack, has cardiac arrest on the field. The game is first postponed against Cincinnati and Buffalo. He has since recovered, as we all know. We all know what's happened with Week 18. We all are preparing for the playoffs as the wildcard weekend is coming up upon us as I'm recording this. And we're very thankful here for the recovery of Damar Hamlin and just the amount of support that has been shown to these players. But on a side note, this is a little bit different take from a fantasy perspective, because fantasy football, we all know it's a game that's played upon a game, right? It's kind of that funny. There's that T-shirt line that we should say, we play a game upon a game. But they're brought that situation, does the game get canceled? Does the game get postponed? Is it going to be rescheduled? That brought out a lot of talk with the fantasy football community, right or wrong. This is not the forum to really argue about that. I'm going to hold my opinion. And if you disagree with it, that's fine. You are welcome to. It brought a lot of talk about what do we do, right? Championship week. This is a week that we have a lot at stake. But to me, as I look at the situation, and again, I had fantasy football lineups that were affected by this because it's on the line. It's championship week. I have guys that are playing that are directly involved with this, or the opponent that I have has players that are directly involved with this. So there's something at stake, so to speak. And I use that, so to speak, really relatively because this, to me, turned into a bigger situation than fantasy football, than actual football, because both of those things are a game. And the situation turned into somebody's life was at risk. Now, again, we know and very thankful that he has made a recovery. He is out of the hospital now, and things are looking good for him. That is honestly the best thing that has come out is he is past the life-threatening situation. He is able to still live, have a life, and be productive in, we don't know what that future holds for him, but of course we all wish Damar Hamlin and his family the best, and hope he has the brightest of futures in whatever he does. I know he will, because you don't get to be in the NFL without being a high-performing individual. You can debate about the classiness of some of the people that are in the NFL, but you have to be a high-performing individual in order to make it to something that you are the best of the best at that point in time, if you're on an NFL team, regardless, because 98% of people cannot do what these men do on the field day by day, week by week, that they go out on the field and do. But to kind of break down my thoughts on that a little bit, I think, you read social media, you hear people talk about it, your leagues, your individual leagues talk about what's the right thing to do. How do we handle this, right? Because you had to deal with a situation where a game was canceled, not rescheduled, and what do? Well, first and foremost, I'll go back and reiterate, this was bigger than fantasy football. This is bigger than the NFL. This is bigger than that game. So because of that, you hopefully were able to put your emotions aside about your game that you play upon a game, your fantasy football league, and say this outcome is not as important as the outcome of what's going on in real life. And if you weren't, I would really challenge you on that to say, yes, it's fun to have bragging rights. It's fun to say I was the champion. That's all fun. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy that just as much as anybody else, but I don't enjoy that over the fact of this situation was bigger than a stupid game that we play. That's played upon a game, right? Because that's what fantasy football is. And I'm going to reiterate that a lot during this time that I'm talking. So, some leagues were able to decide, hey, we're going to take week 18, and the Bills and the Bengals games that played, we're going to just use week 18 stats, week 18 production, and say that's what week 17 would have been. So, therefore, we're going to use that. I understand that logic, because if you have players from either Buffalo or Cincinnati, You would like them to have played a full game. So you would like to have had that. I get that. You get a full game in, don't just get part of a quarter in. So I like that. I like that thought if I have players playing that way, right? You could have been on the opposite side. We're going to take whatever the platform says, which most platforms just said we're going to call it. The week's games are what they are because the game got canceled. I also understand that, right? I understand that thought process too, because we don't take a week's worth of production and place it on a different week. That's not ever how we do fantasy football. There's no situation where we do that. Even when we were dealing with COVID games, where there are some weeks where you took a chance because there were teams playing on a Wednesday that this player might get a 0 because the game just got canceled. Again, this is a different situation, right? This is a totally different situation. I guess for me, I hear different scenarios, different things. I understand both sides of it as far as why somebody would want to say one way or the other what they should do. I also understand from both sides how the other side says that's really not right. That's really not the way it's played. I get that. On one hand, we don't use other week scoring to place it on a different week. On the other hand, we don't just not play a full game. There are situations where certain players, injury, the famous Antonio Brown taking his shirt off in the middle of a game and getting kicked out of the game and then suspended. There are situations where certain players will not finish a game, but not two entire teams. So there's no situation that says this is a one-size-fits-all. So what did we do? What was the right call? Your league may have we were using week 18. Your league also may have said we're calling the games as is. Your league also may have said we're going to split it. We're going to have co-champions. That's not really not the finish you ever want, though, is it? Right? We don't live in a society that, here's a participation trophy. We don't like that. I think we all need to be willing to take the L because this is not about fantasy football. And if the right call was to split, move on, know that this is bigger than us, now's the right call. If your league decided that we are all okay with one way or the other, using week 18, calling it the way it is, or even splitting and saying we're just going to split, there's not really a clear definition of what we can do, so we're going to split and we're going to move on. If your league was able to decide what it wanted to do and not tear each other apart because you did realize this is bigger than just a stupid game, that was the right decision. That was the only way you needed to handle this. We all need to be willing to take the L that week. Because this is not just about a stupid game. It's about somebody's life. Where we're thankful that it's the story has turned positive now. Right? The story is good. We like hearing that. But I want to give my 2 cents on, because the home league where I play with Jake and Grant and there are others, I was competing for the championship. I was up, and my opponent had somebody playing in that game. And the league was split on how are we going to do this. So we called it a tie. We didn't call it a tie. That's a lame term, but we called it a split championship. And honestly, the third place game also went split because the league was effectively split on how do we want to do this. But that's where my notion of this is bigger than a game. You have to be willing to just say, I'm going to not tear the league apart. I'm not going to just put what I think should happen because I feel like this should happen. You have to go just say it's a really bad situation, but this is bigger than what this is. I'm going to take a step back. We're going to move forward. And we're going to do it in a way that does not crush relationships with our league mates, does not tear people apart, because that's not what fantasy football is about. And if you're listening to this and that's exactly what happened in your league, then I'm sorry. But either you are looking at yourself introspectively saying, where did I go wrong in my thought process and becoming better? Or you're realizing I need to find a different league, or I just need to step away. And that's sad. We all enjoy fantasy football. We all love it. But sometimes with certain things we like in life, we have to really take a step back and say, do I need to take a step back? There were times I actually considered, am I done? Because as people talked about it, it felt like we got so focused on the wrong details. We were so focused on, I need to have an outcome in my fake game that I play, and not realize the severity of the situation is a lot bigger than just that. The fake game I play should be secondary, and I should be willing to just take a step back. I hope that's what a lot of leagues had. And if you didn't, I hope you can still find some reconciliation with your league mates. Because ultimately, this is just a stupid game. I love playing it. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking about it. I come on here because I love talking about it. I love giving my thoughts. I love the mental aspect of preparing, seeing where can I be right. But at the end of the day, it's just that it's a dumb game. It's not worth the headache. Sometimes in life, we have to be willing to just take the L, step away. It's bigger than us. So, that's all I have to say on that. And to those that did win, congrats. If you did not win, try next year. This was an odd year to finish, how it finished. But hopefully we learned something about ourselves. And it was positive learning. And if it wasn't positive, hopefully there's opportunity. Then you have to change what you want. So, a few highlights. We're going to get to the bulk of postseason talk, right? On our part 2, coming soon with Jake and Grant. But a few highlights I want to make sure I emphasize here, where I made 5 bold calls in the preseason for NFL teams. I'm going to go through where I was right and wrong, and some of the processes that I can do better reading NFL situations, where that's part of how our prep is for fantasy football, is we read the NFL situations. I'm going to go through 2 that I was wrong. I got 2 wrong. I got 3 right. So actually not bad for bold predictions for the NFL season, right? First bold take that I got wrong, that said the Lions would make the playoffs as a wild card team. Now, I already came on here mid-year, I think when the Lions were like 1-6, and took the L. I regretted that as the season went on. Don't take the L too early on some of your calls. They might come back and bite you, because it came down to a Week 18 game. And honestly, it didn't matter if the Lions won, although I certainly enjoyed seeing that, because the Seahawks won. But it came down to the last week if the Lions were going to make it. The process was right. I'll say why I think the process was right to make that call. The Lions have gotten better. Very quietly gotten better on a rebuild. They have the right pieces, and they're doing the right things that are quietly making them. I honestly think they were probably the fourth, maybe 5th best offense in the NFC. They were not as good as the Eagles, not as good as the 49ers, not as good as the Cowboys, maybe not as good as the Vikings. After that, tell me a team that the offense in the NFC, not the AFC, the NFC was better than the Lions. The Bucs are not better than them offensively. There's no team in the NFC South that's better than them offensively. The Lions are better offensively than the Giants and the Redskins. I also say they're way better than the Seahawks. I think the Lions are the biggest miss out of the playoffs this year. But the process was right. The outcome was not. Look for the teams that are doing the right things, not always fantasy football related, but that have an impact for fantasy football. And it can be hard to differentiate sometimes, but look for that. The other call I got wrong is I said the Colts would win the AFC South. Here's where I got that wrong, and I used a different scenario and went the opposite way in what I got right, and I'll explain that in a minute. So I looked at the Colts and what they did in the offseason. They traded for Matt Ryan. They went and got a quarterback that I didn't think was as aged as he appeared to be. Colts had a very good defense. It's very underrated, but it was a very good defense, and you can see that because quarterback play, wide receiver play, all suffered when your players on rosters had to go against the Colts. I understand late in the season, Cowboys, Vikings, other teams, they got it done third, fourth quarters they allowed big comebacks. Where I got the process wrong was saying adding a piece, like a quarterback and Matt Ryan, elevates the offense. Not understanding what could be the downside of that, right? Not seeing where the downside could be. Looking at Matt Ryan 3-4 years ago, saying he's had Julio Jones, he's had other productive wide receivers, he's led good offenses, he can do it again. Well, that's true, he could have. It didn't happen. Age showed. Now it could have been coaching. You can maybe say it was coaching, right? I tend to think, maybe not. I think there's a part of it that was Matt Ryan. We have to say Matt Ryan has to take responsibility for that. So, process of just saying a player went on a team will make it better, that's wrong. Let's look as a whole. Now, there will be situations we're going to look at a quarterback changing teams and saying, does this elevate that offense? It's going to be a different situation, different scenario. You can't, all I'm saying is wrong to say that just because they added a player, in this case a quarterback, they're going to be better. That's a wrong process. There are other things you have to take into consideration for that. Now, this on the flip side, where I got one right, and there were 3 I got right, and some of these were pretty bold. I said, because everybody was on this team to make the playoffs, be a favorite for the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year, I said the Denver Broncos were going to miss the playoffs. Quarterback, new quarterback, Russell Wilson, coming in. He makes everybody better, right? That's what was said. They also had a new head coach. So this situation was even different. First-time head coach, new head coach. Seeing this team, I was not, and I will admit, I am in an area of the country that is predominantly Kansas City Chiefs fans. So there might be a little home bias of I know what team I'm rooting for. But I was still right in the process of the Denver Broncos this past season had new ownership, new head coach, new quarterback. There's a lot of news right there, right? A lot of new things happening. A head coach that we don't know if he was going to be a head coach, and as we found out already, he has been let go. He is no longer their head coach. I do not think Russell Wilson was going to be as bad as he was this year, but it goes back to the Colts side with Matt Ryan. Doesn't mean it automatically makes them better. Because Seattle Seahawks were better than everybody thought they were going to be. And they lost Russell Wilson. So, there's something to be said there. So I got it right in that process. Now, I used the bigger situation to say there's so much going on. I don't know that this team is automatically going to win 10, 11, 12 games. I didn't think they'd be as bad as they were. I thought they might be closer to 500. But I said they'd miss the playoffs, and they did. So it was right. And it was the right process to say, look at the entire situation. Before you just say this is going to happen, look at an entire situation. So, another one I got right. Tennessee was going to miss the playoffs. I was such a huge Jacksonville Jaguars fan week 18 when they played Tennessee. That game was for the division in the AFC South and for that final playoff spot to see who's going to be the 4th seed. Very, very happy that Tennessee's there. Now, why did I say Tennessee was not going to win the NFC or AFC South? And they were the number 1 seed last year. That's a big call. But they were the number 1 team or seed last year in the AFC. But late in the year, Derrick Henry got hurt. He is now going to be 29 this year or this coming year. Another year older. They did not make a lot of positive changes to their team. They lost A.J. Brown, and they replaced him with Treylon Burks. Now, I think Treylon Burks is a fantastic wide receiver, especially for a rookie. But I did not think he was the direct A.J. Brown replacement. To say he's going to do what A.J. Brown does, say he's going to do it better, nope, don't think so. It's a limited offense that became more limited with the loss of A.J. Brown. With A.J. Brown, they're more dynamic because they have the ability to utilize what Ryan Tannehill did. Throw the ball short, let the playmakers take off with it and go, and rely heavily on the run. They lost the ability to be multidimensional, passing and running, when they traded A.J. Brown away. So, that's also why I said the Colts were going to win. They're adding pieces to make their team better. I was wrong on that. I was right, though, on the call of the Titans are not getting better. You can't remain the same or get worse and say, well, this is going to change it positively. I think there's a famous saying for baseball, but it applies to all sports. It applies to life. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Why is that a thing where if I don't get better, I get worse? Because everybody around you is going to get better. And if you stay where you're at, because everybody else got better, you got worse. So I felt like the Titans got worse over the last offseason. That's where I was not in on them. My final one that I was right on. Philadelphia will win the NFC. They took the number 1 seed. They took the regular season. Now, when I said that, I meant win the regular season. They'll be the number 1 seed. They did the opposite of what Tennessee did, right? They traded 4 playmakers. They said, look, we don't want all these picks. I want an actual playmaker that I know what he can do. I want to surround Jalen Hurts with guys that are going to elevate his play. That's what they did. They took the defense and made it better. They said, I want to surround this entire team and make it better. They were a wild card team last year, and they saw where they lacked, and they saw what they needed, and they went out and did something about it. That's where I was on the Philadelphia Eagles because of those moves. Right process. What are the teams doing? It's all not always fantasy football related. I think that's where we get caught up in the offseason did my team draft a wide receiver or running back? Well, this would be great for fantasy. What if there's a defensive need? What if there's an offensive line need? Those aren't fun, sexy positions. Those are typically the ones that are needed to make the most impact, though. We have to be ready to hear that and know that. How does this affect the team I enjoy, the players that I like drafting? Is this good or bad? So, as we go to this offseason, we're going to be comparing a whole lot of data. We're going to be doing things to make our process better, and that means we're going to put better content out for you, our listeners, as the season goes on. So, be ready for that. Again, coming up soon, part 2. It's going to be our DGAF episode with Grant and Jake. Like and subscribe on our YouTube page. Follow us find us on Spotify if you want all the updates. But we will still have content, not as regularly, but still content out over the off season as there will be videos. But can't wait to see you on the next episode. Be ready for part 2 coming soon.